Good morning. We will start today's class. We have started recording today from the beginning. And what I would like to cover is two sets of ligands. So because of that, I would like to proceed a bit fast. And I'm sure some of this material or quite a bit of this material is something that you have read somewhere or other, so you should be able to follow without difficulty. And as it is recorded, you can always go back to the recorded lecture. In addition, what I would suggest is that you download this program VLC, which allows for playing back the video at a faster rate than the normal rate at which I am speaking. So this enables you to listen to it rapidly. If you are finding it difficult to listen to the slow pace at which I am talking, this happens because I do not see any of you in front of me. So it's a little difficult for me to speak to an empty classroom or an empty room. So I tend to go a bit slow. In case you find it difficult, you can download VLC and speed up the playback. That will help you. Now, I presume that you are able to see see the screen, and let's start with the lecture. We have discussed several alternatives to carbon monoxide, and we talked about the simple replacement of oxygen with sulfur and then oxygen with selenium, and that gave us CS and CSC. And these ligands were very good ligands. They are good pi acceptors, in fact better pi acceptors than carbon monoxide itself. But the difficulty is that in order to make the complex, you have to start with the carbon monoxide complex and do a substitution reaction of some sort, or eliminate sulfur from CS2, or eliminate sulfur using a phosphorus ligand. The phosphorus ligand is a nucleophile. It will attack the carbon, and then the sulfur bites back the phosphorus, and because phosphorus is more oxophilic and chalcophilic, it will take up the sulfur and form PPH3S as a final product, or PPH3SC as a final product. Now it turns out that we can also replace the sulfur with a nitrogen with a negative charge that will make it isoelectronic. So Cn minus is isoelectronic with CO, and in order to remove the negative charge, because that places an extra burden on the metal complex to have a negative charge, you cannot have MCN6 minus. That will place a large amount of negative charge on the metal. So in order to avoid that, you can change the Cn minus to CNR. CNR, this is just capping the ligand with a proton, and that's what I've indicated here, capping the ligand with a proton. It removes the positive charge and leaves the electron count the same. Now, let me, I lost the mouse here. Yeah. So RNC is a neutral equivalent of the Cn minus. And the advantage that you can change R can be changed at will. You can adjust the steric effects, you can adjust the electronic effects. And so in principle, RNC can be a more useful ligand than carbon monoxide itself. So where does the problem come in? The problem comes in again because of the difficulty with RNC. RNCs are organic isocyanates, and if you're an organic chemist, you probably already have encountered this ligand, and it is a nasty ligand. Nasty in the sense generates a very bad stink or smell, and this is unbearable. So nobody likes to work with alkyl isocyanates. There is another disadvantage with alkyl isocyanates, and that is the fact that this molecule can have a resonance structure as follows. First of all, we note that RNC should in fact be a species like so, where you have lone pair on the nitrogen. That would be one of the resonance structures. But you will notice that the other resonance structure that this molecule can have, RNC, is this form. The form where you have a N triple bond C, just like carbon monoxide. You had a C triple bond O, you have a N triple bond C, and now the nitrogen will have a positive charge. And you have an sp hybridized nitrogen that will lead to a linear form. In most of the alkyl isocyanate complexes, the alkyl group is found in a linear geometry. So this angle is 180 degrees. So this is a significant contributor to the structure. That means there is, even if it had a C double bond N, there would be a pi star, but C triple bond N would have two pi star orbitals, which can accept electron density just like the carbon monoxide. And if the metal pushes in electron density back into the, if it pushes in electron density into the pi star orbital, then you will have a form which is similar to this, okay? You will have a form which has got a sigma bond in this direction and a pi bond in this direction. The direction referring to the flow of electron density from the metal to the ligand. So this leads to a linear geometry, but also notice that it leads to a ligand which is significantly polarized. And what happens is, if I have this type of a polarization, I tend to have a nucleophilic attack on this particular ligand. This nucleophilic attack by alcohols and other species like amines lead to a reactive ligand. When it is coordinated, it is very reactive. But if you look at the spectroscopy of this ligand is behaving just like carbon monoxide. So you have a neutral RNC stretching frequency around that of carbon monoxide. It's almost like a C triple bond N. And if I coordinate it to nickel, so here I have nickel 0 L4 species, which is isoelectronic with NiCO4 now, and that has got a 100 centimeter minus 1 stretching frequency, CN stretching frequency. So that is about similar to what you have for nickel tetracarbonyl, and you have significant back bonding or pi acceptor property. This is the pi acceptor property of the RNC ligand. RNC ligand has got pi acceptor property. So everything seems to be similar. You look at the silver complex. The silver complex is now a positively charged D10 species. And when the ligand coordinates to the silver plus, the frequency actually goes up. It goes up by 50 centimeter minus 1, but nevertheless it goes up. This is extremely similar to what happened with carbon monoxide. There, of course, the frequency changes were a little more. So the problem, I said, hinted to this earlier, the fact that you have a slightly positive charge on the carbon when I have this resonance structure. When I have this resonance structure for the molecule, I have a slight positive charge on the carbon. And so what happens is it ends up with species like ethanol and amines doing an attack on the carbon. And so these species attack electron-rich molecules, and you have reaction that leads to a carbene complex now, which is like so. We have in fact made a carbene which has got two heteroatoms substituting the carbon. This should not be very bad, but unfortunately, these compounds, when the R and the AR groups are not sufficiently large, when they are not large, then they are not as stable as the N heterocyclic carbenes, which we are going to talk about in the next week. So, although you have a compound which is very similar to carbon monoxide, which has got apparently some advantages over carbon monoxide in terms of sterics and electronics, you have the unfortunate condition of unpleasant molecule. Isocyanide is an unpleasant molecule. In addition to that, you have a molecule which is not very stable in the presence of alcoholic solvents and other electron-rich molecules. So, so this is the situation as far as isocyanates are concerned. And I want to just point out that carbon monoxide can also react in the same fashion. Ethanol will not react with it in that fashion, but if I take a stronger nucleophile, if I take an RLi or an R minus, which is sufficiently electron rich, then it can attack the carbon monoxide also. And if the carbon monoxide, if I have this resonance structure, double bond C, double bond O, this is delta plus, so R minus attacks the carbon, and it results in a species which is negatively charged. This species which is negatively charged, which is again now the species which Fischer generated. We'll come to that in a moment. But this negatively charged species can react with an alkyl plus cation. Okay. Now, the most convenient way to add an alkyl plus cation is to add it as an oxonium ion. And that's what I have done here in this slide. I treated it with trimethoxyoxonium, trimethyl oxonium salt as a BF4 salt, and I generate a neutral complex. Okay, so this is now a Fischer carbene. Fischer carbene, because he was the person who first made this carbene complex. So what he did was he treated it with alkyl lithium, and then the alkyl lithium was capped. So now we have two carbene complexes in this slide, which is similar to the carbon monoxide in the sense that they do have a vacant p orbital on the carbon, can accept electron density, and that vacant p orbital unfortunately will have competition from donation of electron density from the oxygen, donation of electron density from the nitrogen. Two heteroatoms in the first one on the top of the slide, and two lone pairs on the oxygen are also competing for this vacant p orbital on the oxygen carbon here. So there's a vacant p orbital. So you can think of this as an sp2 hybridized carbon. You have a vacant p orbital which is sitting on the carbon, and that vacant p orbital can accept electron density. So this is called a Fischer carbene. So Fischer carbenes are in fact reasonably stable. They can be used in the laboratory, and we will come to that in a particular moment. But I want to wrap up this section of our discussion in the following way. CS and CE were good ligands, but based on the fact that they had no good precursors, we ended up abandoning them, or rather we pointed out that there is not much of chemistry that is known in these ligand systems. Similarly, R and C, unfortunately, are unpleasant molecules, and for that same reason they are avoided, but they are very good electron donors. extremely good electron donors. CS and CSE are very good pi acceptors. R and C are extremely good electron donors, so they stabilize positive oxidation states. So R and C is unique in the fact that Cn minus and R and C are good ligands for stabilizing positive oxidation states. They stabilize positive oxidation states. Okay. So the unfortunate thing is they get hydrolyzed easily, and so you cannot study reactivity in different conditions, right? So let's now move on to nitric oxide. I'm going to skip nitric oxide quite a bit, but I'll just have a brief section, and then I'm going to post a lecture in which I will discuss nitric oxide complications in a little more detail. The reason for doing this is because I want to cover carbene chemistry today. So other than NHC, I would like to cover carbene chemistry. Okay, so let me now proceed to NO. We meddled with the oxygen part of carbon monoxide. We changed oxygen to sulfur, selenium, and then to NR, etc. What about meddling with the other side, the carbon side? Can we change that to nitrogen? If we change that to nitrogen, we'll have to end up with one extra electron. One more electron will be there on the molecule compared to carbon monoxide. So NO would be isoelectronic to CO minus, which means there will be one electron in the pi star orbital of nitric oxide. If I have an approximately similar molecular orbital description for NO, just like CO, it would be very similar. So I would approximate it, and I would say that there is one electron sitting in the pi star orbital. We have already discussed this a little bit when I talked about electron counting. So let's now refresh our memory. It has an empty pi star orbital if it is CO, but it has one electron on the pi star orbital, and so one can remove that pi star orbital electron easily. So NO can become NO plus rather easily. Minus electron gives you NO plus. This NO plus would be isoelectronic with carbon monoxide, which means it would behave very similar in its bonding, but unfortunately now, because it's positively charged, it's going to be very reluctant to give a pair of electrons. It's not going to be as good an electron donor as carbon monoxide. If you remember, carbon monoxide itself was a very stingy molecule. It would not part with its pair of electrons easily. So it was a poor donor to start with. And now you have NO plus, which is going to be even a poorer electron donor. But on the other hand, the pi star orbital of the NO should be more willing to accept electron density because it is positively charged, right? So the same argument can be applied for the accepting capacity of NO. That should be a better acceptor. So these things are, in fact, readily understandable. If you start with the Lewis dot structure, you can arrive at a very similar sort of reasoning. If I have NO donating only one electron, then it can behave as a one electron ligand, then it will be a bent structure. Okay, so if I have NO plus, it would be a linear structure. MNO would be linear. Whatever I have said so far is substantiated by the fact that the ionization potential of NO is only 9.3 electron volts. The value that I always use as a reference is hydrogen, which is 13.6. Okay, so this is much lower than hydrogen. So it's more loosely held than a valence electron. Okay, so that's what I want to imply. Now, we have already covered this. This is the structure that you would expect for a linear nitric oxide, which is positively charged. Now, let me briefly tell you something about the uh, uh, electronic structure that you have for NO plus, NO, and NO minus. What I would suggest is that I go through this slide and then start skipping slides. NO plus, if what we have been saying is correct, NO plus should have a shorter bond distance. NO had one electron in the pi star orbital. So the bond order between nitrogen and oxygen would be 2.5. Now, if I remove that electron, it will become 3. So the bond distance goes down. Okay, so I have a bond distance which is going down. If I add one more electron to nitric oxide, the bond distance would go up. It would populate the pi star orbital and my bond order will come down to 2. So this is exactly what I'm seeing. Similarly, the stretching frequency is also consistent with what we have been saying. NO plus has got a larger stretching frequency. NO minus has got a lesser stretching frequency. Now, the oxidation potential of NO plus is 23 electron volt, whereas carbon monoxide is 15. If you remember what I told you, 15 electron volts is approximately like a valence electron sitting on an atom. So this is a reasonable sigma donor. This is a poor sigma donor. Okay, I would say even carbon monoxide is a poor sigma donor, whereas NO plus would be a very poor sigma donor. Okay, but unfortunately, like I said, NO plus, NO minus, these charges are formal charges that we put on a metal complex. If I have an isolated molecule, this is exactly what you expect, and this is exactly what you observe. What you calculate, what you intuitively expect are all consistent. Unfortunately, when the moment you put it in a metal complex, you cannot have perfect one electron charges, etc., on the ligand or on the metal. Okay. So I'm going to skip now the electron counting part, because partly because I've already done it and partly because I'm going to post it a little more. So I'll skip this and I will now go to the next section. Okay, I go to the next section, which is going to be some kind of futuristic. Futuristic, I'm saying, because this is a paper that was published in '98. I have said recent, which is not correct anymore. This is close to 2000, and then now we have 20 years past, and still people have not been able to make the ligands that these people have predicted. What they have predicted is something that I'm going to show you. NO plus, okay, NO plus is isoelectronic with carbon monoxide. And now we are meddling with the carbon part. Remember, we tried changing the oxygen part, with not too much success. Now we're trying to change the carbon part. We'll change carbon to nitrogen, and then we got NO. NO plus has got some good chemistry, but there is a lot of complication because of the number of electrons it can donate and it can accept. And we will see the chemistry is complicated. But can we do something else? And the answer is we can change both. Okay, so if you remember, our periodic table tells us that boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. We had boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. So we have made a molecule with carbon and oxygen, and we found that that's the best ligand. So in order to get the same electron count, we can also do like this, combine boron and fluorine. So BF. So will this BF be a good molecule? It should have even more electron density difference, electron negativity difference between the two atoms, and maybe it will have the perfect binding characteristic. So that was the reasoning behind the authors of this paper. I will post this paper in the website, so you can all read this. And what they have calculated the properties for BF. You can also have BO minus. This would also be isoelectronic to CO, and we can now protonate BO minus to BOR. Okay, so that should also be a good ligand. Or we can go one step further, change instead of oxygen, we can have nitrogen. I now have no power in my room. In case you lose connection, I will switch to the mobile. Okay, I'll switch to the mobile and I'll try to give the same lecture. But let's see. I presume you're able to hear me. If you have a problem, you let me know. Okay, so here we go. We now try to look at this paper by Andreas Ehlers and Behrens. And this is, all these people have become independent researchers and they are publishing very interesting papers. But they were working with Behrens in 1998 and they published this paper, which was about BF. What they did was the following. They compared the electronic structure of these molecules. They compared the electronic structure of these molecules. And if you remember, this is the HOMO. And this is the LUMO. And they have calculated the LUMO is a degenerate pi star orbital. Okay, so carbon monoxide had a lone pair which is significantly concentrated on the carbon. 90%, this 90% refers to the contribution of the carbon orbital to the HOMO. So if a boron is coordinated, then it is a contribution of the boron. Okay, so it can be nitrogen also. So in the case of nitrogen, it is homonuclear diatomic. So both nitrogens contribute equally. So that's why it is 50%. So what you see is that as you go from one of these molecules to the other, the contribution of the donor orbital, which is ligated to the metal, is changing. And it is best for carbon monoxide and BF. Carbon monoxide and BF are very good. BNH2 is also good. These are all hypothetical ligands now. And BO minus is really good. Okay. And what you find is the acceptor orbital is also coming down. The acceptor orbital, if it is low, then it is better. Okay, lower the better. You see that it's approximately similar, but all of them are neutral molecules in this case, except for BO minus. When it becomes BO minus, of course, there is one orbital which is very low, one orbital which is very high. Okay, and the orbital which is very low is in fact populated with two electrons, and unless you end up protonating it, you will end up with, if you protonate it, this will become your LUMO. Okay, so BOR may not be a good ligand because the acceptor orbital might be very high in energy, or it would have to be the BOR sigma star. So let me concentrate on BF. BF seems to be having an ideal set of orbitals for donation. And you'll also see that the overlap of, suppose I have a hypothetical species like FeCO4, okay, this is FeCO4. If I have a metal compound, then if I had a CO, then I would have a acceptor orbital here, okay, and a pi donor orbital also. But let me draw only this. So this is the place where the ligand is going to come in, and they have looked at the overlap. So what is underlined or what is highlighted in yellow is the overlap. Overlap is also significantly good for all these ligands. Nitrogen is poor because it's only 50%. It's only 50% of what it would have on the whole molecule. So, whereas for carbon monoxide, boron, and BF, all of them contribute significantly larger amounts, and so this is the overlap is significantly more. So, BF seems to be a good ligand, and if you calculate the binding energy, here I have listed the binding energy. This is in kilocalories per mole. What you find is that BF has got the highest binding energy. Okay, the level of pi star and the sigma donor, everything is ideal. So this seems to have very good binding energy with FeCO4. But until now, it is a hypothetical molecule. Nobody has made a molecule complex of BF the way in which CF binds. I'll show you what has been done. What has been done is a paper in 2009, that is 10 years after these people published the paper on BF, somebody managed to make a molecule with BF, but now it is in a bridging position. Now it is in a bridging position, and there is evidence for pi bonding, but it is not as good, according to them, it's not as good a pi acceptor as carbon monoxide in the bridging position. Okay, so in one way, publication of a computational paper helps in the advancement of science. It helps people to look for these molecules. So this is a clear example of what has been going on in the search for ligands to replace carbon monoxide. Okay, let me go to now dinitrogen. The other molecule referred to in the paper was dinitrogen. Dinitrogen is something that has been extensively studied by a person called Paul Schirik. Paul Schirik is currently the editor of the journal Organometallics, published by ACS. And he published this article when he was still at Cornell in 2004. And this is an extensive review article, in fact. And what it suggested was that carbon monoxide, compared to carbon monoxide, dinitrogen is not as good a ligand, but it has got a lot more variety in binding to the metal system. What do I mean by that? Carbon monoxide, because it's unsymmetrical, it would not like to bind in a symmetrical fashion. Dinitrogen, on the other hand, binds in symmetrical fashion also. But here I have shown for you two complexes where the only change that has been made in this molecule is that instead of simple CP, which is bis cyclopentadienyl titanium, this molecule, instead of this has been substituted in all the positions with the methyl group. Okay, with the methyl group in one carbon, it has been an isopropyl group. Okay, so two isopropyl groups are there. In one position, it is an isopropyl group, but otherwise in every position, it is a methyl group. And this is a crystal structure of this molecule. and you'll find that the dinitrogen is in fact linearly bound just like carbon monoxide. So you will find that this is exactly like carbon monoxide, and the bond distances and the energies that you expect, bond distances and the bond angles that you expect for this molecule are just like what you would expect on the basis of the paper that I just showed you a few minutes ago by Barons. Dinitrogen is not a bad ligand. In fact, it was difficult to detect because many people do their reactions under dinitrogen. So if you end up with a dinitrogen complex, you can miss it. You may not know that it is in fact interacted with dinitrogen. Okay, so plus they are weakly bound. So what happens is if you bubble argon through this complex, it might lose dinitrogen. So this is a complication that people do not realize. Of course, Paul Schirek's group has a huge number of complexes, and some of them are pictured here, which are in fact so flexible that even the pressure of dinitrogen in the solution is capable of interconverting the molecule from mono dibridging dinitrogen to a bis dinitrogen complex. Okay, so here you have three dinitrogens and three dinitrogens coordinated to two titanium cyclopentadienyl molecules, and it's in equilibrium with one which is got only one dinitrogen. So this type of an equilibrium tells you that first of all that the bond energy is very small. Secondly, it tells you, I forget I should put down the temperature at which this was done, but the pressure was what made the difference, and they could detect it using NMR. And the substituent on the cyclopentadienyl group is sufficient to tilt the balance in favor of one or the other. So there is also this possibility of it bridging sideways. Okay, this is called end-on bridging. This is end-on coordination. This is end-on bridging. This is side-on bridging. It's also called rooftop. Because if you look at this molecule, in this angle, it would look like this. Okay, so this is one nitrogen, this is another nitrogen, and you have, in fact, you could, I'm going to draw it in this fashion. So you can see the rooftop bridging of this dinitrogen. So this is side-on bridging or rooftop. They are also called, some of them are called butterfly molecules because they are looking like the wings of a butterfly. So this paper was but there are other transition metals, including people have made with, I think, with lanthanides and actinides also. So with this, I'm going to shift to another presentation. So hold on for a second. Let me. Just give me a moment, please. I'm not able to see. Okay. Try again. Yeah. I hope you are able to see my slide now. So, let me quickly recap for you where we are situated in terms of our discussion of ligands. I said that all the carbon ligands can be classified on the basis of whether they are odd number of carbons or even number of carbons. I have even number of carbons listed lower half of this mind map, and with a single carbon attached to the metal like this, and then I have odd even number of carbons and odd number of carbons separated out. And we discussed a lot of this CO as a unique ligand. We also noted that if I have CN derivatives, I can in fact change them into carbenes, which will look like these heterocyclic carbenes. And they will also, some of them, carbon monoxide itself can be converted into a Fischer carbene. So those are things which we discussed. And I'm going to talk about the other carbenes today. So let me proceed. So this is what I was telling you, and that CO can be converted into a Fischer carbene, and RNC can be converted into a species which looks like an heterocyclic carbene. We looked at this reaction where we converted it into a Fischer carbene. I would like to just briefly mention that the bond distances that you observe for this Fischer carbene is expect for a system which is a pi acceptor. But at the same time, because you have competition between the oxygen and the metal for the p orbital on the carbon, the empty p orbital on the carbon is an acceptor, and it is competing now with an oxygen on the OR group. So this now becomes a weaker pi acceptor. Okay. So the predicted distance, for example, for chromium plus carbon, a single bond is 2.21. What you observe is 2.04. This is similar to what you expect for what you see for carbon monoxide also. There is a shortening of the sigma bond between the chromium and carbon. So it suggests that you have a structure which is like a pi bond. Now, I have written this very odd structure where I have put double bonds between carbon and chromium everywhere. As I explained to you, the same d orbital is competing with the two trans ligands. So you should not really draw proper pi bonds between, you should always draw only half bond if you want to draw a proper valence structure. This is a resonance between a single bond and a double bond. And same thing here, it's a single bond sigma plus half pi. Okay, so you have some shortening that you expect and you observe it also. And it's right. If you look at the CO bond distance, that has also. So what that means is between the carbon and oxygen also there is a partial double bond. So this distance is also shorter than expected for a sigma bond, and it is longer than what you have for a double bond as an acetone. So it is these two bonds are half pi bonds between the chromium and the carbon and between the carbon and the oxygen. If that is the case, the cis, these two can be cis or they can be trans. So in some instances, if you cool the solution of this metal complex, you can see two different isomers. So this is in fact shown spectroscopically that there is a partial double bond between the carbon and the oxygen. Have an indication of a partial double bond, and you also have a slight carbenium ion character on the carbon. So you have chemical shifts which are very high in terms of ppm value. Okay. Okay. So these are Fischer carbines. You have, as I explained to you, you can write it as an sp2 carbon, which has got a donor orbital which is filled and a vacant pi orbital. The vacant pi orbital can accept electrons in the pi, which is different from the sigma framework, which is a donor. So this is very similar to a CO in that sense. As far as the metal looks at it, when the metal looks at it, the metal will look only at the empty pi system and the filled sigma system. How do they make it? In many cases, the synthesis is a bit convoluted. Here is one example where I start with the di-negative chromium complex and displace two chlorides on the same carbon on this carbon which is undergoing the substitution. You end up with this type of okay. In this case, I should not say Fischer carbene. This is in fact two carbons on the carbene carbon. So this is a short carbene. So here is another example where I have an extrusion. You remember I talked about some 4 or 5 principles of making metal carbon bonds. One of them was the extrusion of a molecule. So in this case, extrusion of dinitrogen is taking place. This is a diazo compound. The diazo compound is stabilized by the positioning of a CO group in the adjacent position, in the adjacent carbon, and it leads to a stable system which can be heated in the presence of a metal system which has been primed. This THF is a weak donor, it's a weak ligand. And if you heat it, the dinitrogen leaves, the THF is in equilibrium with the coordinated species and it forms the carbene complex. Okay. So this is one way in which you can make it. The other way was by doing a nucleophilic substitution. A third way is by, okay, this is again extrusion of dinitrogen. Here we have taken diazomethane and removed dinitrogen. A third way is a rather strange way. This is by addition of a proton. You look at this, this molecule which has got an acyl group, you can protonate it using trifluoromethane sulfonic acid. This is a very strong acid. And this acid now protonates the oxygen, the lone pairs on this oxygen, and it leads to formation of a cationic complex. But this cationic complex has the form which is characteristic of a Fischer carbene. Fischer carbene, only point is this has got a hydrogen and not a methyl group now. Here I showed you how I can add a methyl group. Here I have added a proton. One more way is to remove a hydrogen by using a proton sponge. In this case, in this example, I have used trithyl cation. This species will abstract the H minus, abstracts H minus. So what it would leave behind is a positively charged molecule. So it leaves behind a positively charged molecule. Here is a positively charged molecule, but now it is a carbene. And PH3CH is what you have as a side product, unreactive side product, which can be removed. But this is a way by which you can make from alkyl complexes. This is again Schrock carbene because it doesn't have any substituents. And similarly, the previous examples also, we had some which had no substituents, so they are not really Fischer carbenes. A Fischer carbene is always stabilized by a heteroatom. So, okay, I'm going backwards. So here is another example, which is equivalent of a transmetallation. In the case of transmetallation with transition metals, especially with pi bonded ligands, it's very difficult to use electronegativity principles. This is an example where you have chromium with a carbene, which is a Fischer carbene actually, Fischer carbene, but this is transferred now to a tungsten. Here, I would like to describe this equation or reaction as follows. It is a tungsten which calls the shots. Tungsten forms stronger metal carbon bonds than chromium. So what is happening here is that the more stable tungsten complex is formed. Tungsten would like to get rid of one carbon monoxide and have a weaker pi acceptor in the transposition. So that is something that would lead to a more stable tungsten complex. Chromium, on the other hand, forms weaker metal carbon bonds. And this presumably goes through some kind of an intermediate where you would have a bridging species. Nothing is known about the mechanism of the reaction and the percentage of the CrCO6 that is formed. Because as I tell you in the next few lectures, you cannot have a substitution reaction on these metal carbonyls without ligand dissociation. And if ligand dissociation has happened and carbon monoxide has gone into solution, it's unlikely that you would get 100% yield of CrCO6. Okay, one of the metal complexes would lose some yield because the other ligand would have to be transferred through the bridge species, and one ligand would have to be lost. Okay. Here is another example where you transfer it to a 3D transition metal, but now you bias the system in a particular fashion. And the way in which they have biased the system is by making a coordinatively unsaturated species. FeCO5, if you shine light on it, if you heat it or if you shine light on it, okay, you would form FeCO4. Now, this being a coordinatively unsaturated species seems to be able to grab a carbene from the molybdenum onto the iron. Given the fact that molybdenum is in the lower group, it is right below chromium, so it is a 4D transition metal, and a 4D transition metal should be having a stronger metal carbon bond. But because this did not have any bonds, this is now needing another ligand very badly. That seems to pick up the carbene ligand from the molybdenum. I don't have any other better explanation to give. In fact, I would again suspect that these are not high yielding reactions, but these are reactions that have been carried out to generate these molecules. So in all these cases, you have this give and take, or this DCD model. Okay, Dewar-Chatt-Duncanson model. You have a pi acceptor orbital on the carbon and a sigma donor on the metal. Carbines are also possible, and here is an example which is very strange. I would like you to test your, or rather rack your brains about what is going on in terms of electron count in this molecule. If you are in class, I would have asked you to do this, but now I can't do it here. But let me ask you to think about this molecule. What has happened is BX2OCH3 is the other product. Okay, so this would be donated to the boron, and as a result, what is happening is you end up with a positively charged tungsten species, and this is BX3OCH3 minus would be the counter ion, and that abstracts, or that kicks out an X minus, which is now sitting here in this molecule. So this is an 18 electron species. As I told you, both ionic method of counting and the other method, the neutral method, should give you the same electron count, but just cross-check your electron counting processes. Okay. Now, abstraction of a proton can be done from the carbenes to give you carbines, and this is in fact done with a very mild base, and the mild base is a Wittig reagent. A Wittig reagent is used in this case to generate this species. Okay, so this will have CH3, PPH3 plus Cl minus as a other product. Okay. The bond distances in carbines are less than carbenes, as you would expect, and here is one more method of doing it, mimicking these molecules. This we have already seen. In this example, we have used an extreme form of reduction with sodium and mercury. Sodium and mercury is probably one of the strongest ways in which you can reduce the tantalum from a +3 oxidation state. Here, okay, this is, you're removing the two bromides and you're generating a species which I would say is +2, but this is because of the carbine, we again have a problem with the electron counting. The neutral method wins. Neutral method is safer to use in all these cases. Okay, use the neutral method of counting, because the carbine is a real problem ligand as far as electron counting is concerned. NO+ is better. Carbine gives me a lot of trouble. best is to use it as a neutral 3-electron donor, okay, and do the electron counting in these molecules. So I think I will stop here with this. I will discuss this in a problem that I will give you. So we have come to carbene to carbine. Is it possible to make a carbide? Answer is yes. I will again discuss it in a post which I will do. I will stop here because it's 11 o'clock, and I will continue with Friday is again a holiday. So I will just post a lecture in which I will discuss the nitric oxide and also discuss the carbide ligand and so on and so forth. So I will stop here right now. Any questions, quick questions? Otherwise I will close shop.
So will you be posting the lecture notes of the previous lecture?
Sorry?
So will you be posting the lecture notes of the previous lectures?
Why they are not appearing? They will be there in the Teams website.
So they haven't. Like after the second week, I don't see any lecture notes. I mean, the references etc. are there, but not the notes.
What exactly do you mean by lecture notes?
So the presentation. That's what I meant.
Sorry?
So the presentation that you're doing, the PPT.
Yeah, but that is there. I found it redundant because if the video is having it, right?
Okay, sir. Okay.
So why I have to post a video and then I have to post a, so I thought at least I'll save some time doing that. I don't have to do the video is already there.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so I will be posting some video material, and also I'll post some quizzes and so on. So we'll meet again on next Monday.
Sir, that non-classical complexes will be more the nucleophilic addition will be more in case of non-classical complexes like carbonyl complexes. The nucleophilic addition to CO.
Yes, they are extremely reactive, and in fact, even to protect them with from water and air is a problem. So I don't think chemistry has been studied. With some difficulty, they have characterized these compounds crystallographically, but not much is known about the chemistry of this cationic species. They will be extremely susceptible to attack by electron-rich species.
And said in the paper of Fensky and Hall, there was like a thing was said about the direct contribution of electron density from the pz orbital of the halogen to that of the y orbital of that of the CO, pi star y orbital of CO. Like, but they are perpendicular, right? How is the electron donation occurring directly here?
I'm not sure you have understood that properly. If it is perpendicular, it cannot be donating, right?
Yeah, there is like direct contribution of electron density they are saying. I'm not understanding like.
I don't think they would have said that. I would find it very difficult to believe that a perpendicular orbital will contribute. Let me. Can you please underline the thing and send a snapshot or something, because I
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
yeah, because if px and if you have an M and a CO, okay, and you're talking about X, the P on the P, if this is P, if this is a Z axis, Px and Py orbitals are capable of interacting with the appropriate d orbital and the pi star of the carbon monoxide.
So the X is here cis, they have said, the cis compound they're showing.
They're talking about the cis compound.
Yeah, cis, yeah.
Okay, so then the axis definition for the cis halogen we need to see. Okay, so let me take a look at it and then I'll explain. There is a complication due to what was described in Cotton and Wilkinson's book as a cis effect. Okay, and the reason is fairly straightforward. Suppose I take the Py, okay, it will interact with the Py orbital will interact with the dxy orbital on the metal. The Py on, right, Py on the X, on X will interact with dxy on X. Py on X will interact with dxy on the metal. Okay. And in turn, this will, if this was the Px or pi star, then the Py on the pi star of CO will interact with the dxy of the metal. It's in plane. Okay, they are talking about the in plane orbitals. X and CO, and they're talking about this plane. Are you able to follow?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think so there is a difference between the two. Okay, shall I close now? I have a call also. Hello. No, yes, ma'am. Good morning. I am not finished with the class. I'll call you back. I'll call you back. Okay. So I'm leaving. That is the class.